X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine is a 10-issue weekly comic series alternating between lives and deaths issues week to week, telling the story of a time-traveling Wolverine protecting someone critical to mutant kind. The event is written by ongoing Wolverine scribe Benjamin Percy, with alternating art by Joshua Cassara, Adam Kubert, and Federico Vicenti. The event holds down the X-Men Comics fort until the end of March, when the post-Inferno Destiny of X era can begin in earnest. In interviews, Percy has described this as his attempt to write the greatest Wolverine story of all time, pulling from all eras of the character's past, present, and future. Issue number 1 launches today and gives a taste of what's to come. Today I'll answer, what is X Lives Wolverine about? Who is Wolverine tasked with protecting? How X Lives Wolverine ties into the X-Men's Krakoa era, heading into the Destiny of X. Hey everybody, I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. You are listening to Krakin Krakoa, X Lives of Wolverine number 1. If you like the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting. That all helps me out a great deal. Casual Krakoas air every Wednesday that I'm interested in X-Men comics, available circa 5:15 Central Standard Time for the live stream. You can always catch up on them later as well, as they are available on the channel in the playlist if you subscribe. Links for all the reading guides are in the show notes. Spoilers for Discuss Comics follow. Writer Benjamin Percy, artist Joshua Cassara, colors by Frank Martin, letters by Corey Pettit. PSA, you can read this issue number 1 for free with a Marvel Unlimited subscription. X Lives opens with Wolverine holding a copy of Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time on the coastal cliffs of Krakoa, or at least that would have been less ham-fisted than Wolverine musing about the power of watches. I bet he'd love sipping a cold one with Dr. Jonathan Osterman, and Professor X meeting him in a splash page saying, "It's time," as he and Jean Grey prep to send Logan into the time stream. Days of Future Past style, definitely reminiscent of that Claremont and Byrne classic. There's a chance that the most interesting thing about the entire 39-page comic is the reference to Logan the 6th and Logan the 7th in the opening credits, presumably referencing the 10 lives we will see. I am anticipating that the redacted references here are the characters who will join Logan in these lives, but that remains to be seen for sure. The idea of multiple Logans mirrors Moira X's 10 lives from House of X and Powers in 10, and if played right, could tap into these same thrilling story potentials of multiple lifelines and outcomes. Does it though? Logan's first time travel journey, or first that we see because wibbly wobbly timey wimey, is going back to the birth of Charles Xavier, and not for nothing the stillborn apparent death of his twin, Cassandra Nova. Protecting Charlie from time murder was only, not my favorite pick because of how familiar and banal it felt in terms of who Wolverine might be protecting. Nonetheless, that's the implied purpose of this mission as we see it in X Lives of Wolverine. The birth is interrupted by the apparent time-traveling spirit of Omega Red, inhabiting the bodies of Xavier's house staff like Darkseid's anti-life equation, replete with Omega symbols branding on their foreheads. This turns Omega Red into an invasion of the Body Snatcher-style Agent Smith from the Matrix, inhabiting real people and forcing Wolverine and the Xaviers to choose violence on these quote-unquote innocents, knowing Omega may just hop to another body next. Artistically, I'm always a huge fan of Cassara and Martin, but one especially nice touch here is the use of worn page backgrounds to evoke the paper of the era while at the Xavier estate. How is Omega Red doing this? Well, we don't know for sure, but we do see him whiplash gold balls and break into Krakoa's hatchery to figure out if he's been lied to by the oh-so-trustworthy Beast in X-Force. And of course, he has. Omega discovers that the carbonadium synthesizer Forge built for him upon resurrection includes a surveillance plant, so X-Force could track Omega Red's movements and status as a mole for Dracula and his vampire nation. It's pretty deliberately set up to keep Omega Red in line and indebted to X-Force for sustenance, much like Mother Russia did with the character in his origins way back when. There are two notable things that come out of this. One, we see, not for the first time, that the Five are wholly opposed to what X-Force is doing to Omega Red, and yet again position themselves as the actual champions of the goals and purpose of Krakoa. There's a strong argument to be made right now that if Krakoa was largely driven by Doug Ramsey and the Five, it would actually live up to the peaceful island nation haven for mutants that it purports to be. And once again, as Director of Intelligence for X-Force, it is Beast who plays the pragmatic, dirty villain, which he has held onto with ferocity throughout the entirety of the Krakoa era. The real lesson here, though, is that X Lives of Wolverine is merely a continuation of the now 40-plus issue combined run of X-Force and Wolverine that Benjamin Percy has been writing since 2019. I give comics readers a lot of credit for being able to put context clues together, right? It's a big part of superhero fandom, so I don't know that X-Lives is too complex without the background of X-Force and Wolverine, but it's definitely heavily referential with every single Omega Red scene set in the present day, and with Krakoa's relationship to Russia and Mikhail Rasputin. I'm not a super fan of X-Force and Wolverine, I like them fine, but I do think they're often interesting, frequently visually excellent works in the Krakoa era, so if you're even mildly interested, give them a go and see how it suits your taste. I do think X-Lives will pay off a lot more with that level of familiarity. In that regard, it reminds me most of Trial of Magneto, which was very much a continuation of Lee Williams and David Baldion's X-Factor, despite being repurposed and renamed as a new event. If you're wondering what's the deal with the Russia stuff, my theory is we'll see Percy tie in the biggest reveal from his recent X-Force comics and Inferno, Jonathan Hickman's final series in the X-Men franchise, by bringing Colossus into the series. Colossus is the brother of Mikhail Rasputin, and Mikhail, a mutant himself but allied with Russia and not Krakoa, is using a new mutant known as the Chronicler to seemingly control Colossus. In Inferno number 2, we see Colossus added to Krakoa's Quiet Council, so the character is now in a unique position of power within the mutant nation. My expectation is that following the revelations of Inferno number 4, in which Emma Frost, Mystique, and Destiny revealed to the full Quiet Council the schemes of Professor X, Magneto, and Moira, that Colossus will now, knowingly or not, reveal some of this information to Mikhail and Mother Russia. And with this information in tow, Mikhail and comrades will combine to send Omega Red in time on the murder crusade against Krakoa's founding father, Professor X. And if we're lucky, maybe X deaths will include some with Magneto. You know, for a long time I thought, okay, X lives and X deaths will probably include Wolverine trying to protect Moira X from assassination, but in retrospect, I'm not sure that makes a heck of a lot of sense, because if the assassins know that assassinating Moira X would reset the timeline, that doesn't work. Although maybe if you do it before her mutant powers develop, then maybe we go back to square one, and that actually does sound like the best possible idea. So we'll see if that comes into play as the series continues. Otherwise, Logan's back at the Xavier estate to keep Omega Red from killing wee baby Charlie and his family. This is not overtly stated, and I'll come back to that, but Logan's bone claws indicate he has traveled in time to his body of the era, but with the memories of the Krakoa age, right? So it's like his mind, right, his essence, whatever you want to call it, is sent in time to his old body. Jean and Professor X set him up with a Cerebro helmet so he can achieve this. In the flashiest panel set of the issue, the only real page that makes full use of Cassara and Frank Martin's talents, we see glimpses of various lives Wolverine may travel back to. And this is probably the biggest thing that drives me nuts about X Lives of Wolverine number 1, is the absence of a clear mission statement. This comic needed to declare its purpose and sell why it's an essential step between Inferno and Destiny of X, and instead it just coasts. It coasts along like it's the next issue of the ongoing Wolverine series. And honestly, had it been that, had it just been the next issue of Wolverine, I'd probably be pretty into it. I'd be like, this is a cool storyline. I'm more invested in Percy's Wolverine again, which I've been hit and miss, hot and cold on, right? Sometimes it grabs me, sometimes it doesn't. But as a standalone event, as a thing with great expectations, it's coasting. It's not where it needs to be. As expected, Wolverine saves the wee baby Charlie, and only moments later is sucked in a time vortex to his CIA days on Team X with Maverick and Sabretooth, something that we've seen explored a fair amount in the Percy run on Wolverine. A psychic projection of Jean appears to tell Wolverine where to go to save Professor X in this timeline, and he's back on another mission. Now, I can certainly see the appeal of Quantum Leap meets Terminator playing all Wolverine's greatest hits, but my end feeling with X Lives of Wolverine is real frustration. I want these comics to be incredible. I want them to rise to the level the Krakoa era can achieve, and instead I spent $6 on a Wolverine story that could have happened any time over the last 21 years. This embodies the number one problem with the X-Office vets now, as I'm calling them. They're hoarding storytelling capital because they feel they have years and years to tell it. Spend the capital, right? Spend those gains. Do something exciting. Blow this up, bring some juice to the equation, and get this story going. The audience that came in with House and Powers is not full of unlimited patience, and clearly, neither am I. Now, I'm here to give X Deaths number 1 a shot in a week and hope there is more juice in the second event issue. But if it's just timescapades with Wolverine saving Professor X, I've seen X-Men 92's one man's worth. I might be good. Nonetheless, everything now rides on X Deaths number 1, complete with a phalanxy Wolverine and promises of the future. If X Deaths makes good on playing with future timelines, this event may still be saved. Yes, it is early. Right now, I'd say unless you're all in on Percy's X-Force Wolverines run, though, wait and see on this X Lives and X Deaths experience. Wait until it's done and go back and binge it on Marvel Unlimited. But if you like Percy on X-Force and Wolverine, I expect you'll like this too, because again, it is very much just a continuation of those books that have been building for years. And that's the other piece of this that I want to touch on. Percy's already been building this story for a long time now, multiple years on X-Force and Wolverine. So for this issue to take its time in building up what it's going to be, that's just time upon time upon time. Get to the good bits. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of Comic Book Herald. If you like the website, if you like the channel, you can support over at patreon.com/comicbookherald. Support is greatly appreciated. Thank you in particular to those in the mysterious benefactors tier of support. Thank you, Jesse W., Megan Getman, Cole Weathers, Professor X3769, Richard Renz, Adam, Chris Murtficka, Terra Nort, Pinball Drew, Mike Solomons, Matt Mahoney, Joshua Bentley, and Alma. Again, you can find all my stuff at comicbookherald.com, including a recent list we did of the X best Wolverine comics of all time. It's a good one. I've got my pick on there of what I think is the best Wolverine comic of all time. You can find me on social, on Twitter and Instagram at Comic Book Herald. Look for the best comics ever and My Marvel This Year podcast for more from me, including Hickmania. You can get it via the podcast. I also put up the conversation I had on the nightly news as we read through all of Jonathan Hickman's creator-owned works and talk about them. That's up on the YouTube channel, so go on over to the CBH channel and you can find it there. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and as always, enjoy the comics.